meine Arbeit für richtig hältst. Ob du glaubst, dass ich fleißig gewesen bin, dass ich gearbeitet habe, dass ich mich in diesen Jahren für dich eingesetzt habe.
Adolf Hitler, a name synonymous with terror, genocide, and the darkest chapter in human history. His rise to power and the atrocities committed under his regime remain a stark reminder of how unchecked hatred and authoritarianism can plunge the world into chaos. This is the story of Adolf Hitler, his origins, his rise, and his catastrophic fall. Adolf Hitler was born on April the 20th, 1889, in Brono Ammin, a small Austrian town near the German border. He was the fourth of 6 children born to Alois Hitler and Clara Pelzel. Of his siblings, only Adolf and his younger sister Paula survived into adulthood. Hitler's father, Alois, was a strict and domineering customs official. Alois had been born illegitimately and later adopted the surname Hitler, which some speculate may have influenced his son's identity struggles. Clara, Adolf's mother, was devoted to her children but often overindulged Adolf, particularly after the death of his siblings. Adolf's childhood was marked by frequent moves due to his father's job. The family eventually settled in the town of Leonding, where Alois's strictness created a tense household. Alois hoped Adolf would follow in his footsteps as a civil servant, but the young boy showed little interest in such a career. From a young age, Adolf dreamed of becoming an artist. He spent hours drawing and painting, but his academic performance was lackluster. Teachers described him as intelligent but lazy, often defying authority. His rejection by the Academy of Fine Arts Vienna in 1907 and 1908 was a devastating blow. The school's admissions board criticized his lack of skill in human anatomy and perspective, further crushing his aspirations. After the death of his parents, Hitler moved to Vienna, where he struggled to make a living. He painted postcards and advertisements, scraping by in poverty. It was during these difficult years that Hitler's political beliefs began to solidify. Vienna, a melting pot of cultures and ethnicities, exposed him to nationalist and anti-Semitic ideologies that were prevalent in certain circles. Hitler's deepening prejudices and frustrations were compounded by his personal failures. He began to see himself as a victim of a corrupt and unjust system, blaming Jews and other groups for his misfortunes. These beliefs would later form the foundation of his political ideology.
Hey, hurry up and back. Come on, hurry up.
World War I and political awakening. In 1914, Hitler found a new sense of purpose when World War I broke out. He eagerly enlisted in the Bavarian army, despite being an Austrian citizen. For Hitler, the war represented an opportunity to prove his loyalty to Germany and escape the aimlessness of his civilian life. As a soldier, Hitler served as a messenger on the Western Front, a dangerous role that required him to deliver orders under fire. Despite the hazardous conditions, he thrived in the regimented military environment and was praised for his dedication. Hitler was awarded the Iron Cross Second Class in 1914 and the Iron Cross First Class in 1918, a rare honor for a corporal. However, the end of the war in 1918 was a crushing defeat for Hitler. Germany's surrender and the signing of the Treaty of Versailles left him feeling betrayed and humiliated. He adopted the widespread belief that Germany had been stabbed in the back by internal enemies, including Jews and Marxists. This conspiracy theory would become central to his worldview. Returning to a defeated Germany, Hitler struggled to find his place in society. He remained in the army as an intelligence agent, tasked with monitoring political groups. It was in this role that he first encountered the German Workers' Party, a small nationalist organization that he would later transform into the Nazi Party. The rise of the Nazi Party. The German Workers' Party, DAP, was a fledgling organization when Hitler joined in 1919. His oratory skills and passion quickly set him apart, and he began to attract followers. By 1920, the party had been renamed the National Socialist German Workers' Party, or Nazi Party, with Hitler as one of its key leaders. The Nazi Party's platform was built on nationalism, anti-Semitism, and opposition to the Treaty of Versailles. Hitler's speeches, delivered with fiery rhetoric and dramatic gestures, drew large crowds. He portrayed himself as a savior who would restore Germany's honor and strength. In 1923, emboldened by the party's growing support, Hitler attempted to overthrow the government in the Beer Hall Putsch. Coup failed, and Hitler was arrested and sentenced to 5 years in prison. However, his time in jail became a turning point. During his 9 months in prison, Hitler wrote Mein Kampf, My Struggle, a manifesto that outlined his vision for Germany. The book detailed his expansionist ambitions, his hatred for Jews, and his belief in the superiority of the Aryan race. Mein Kampf would later become required reading in Nazi Germany. Path to Power. The Great Depression of 1929 created a perfect storm for Hitler's rise. Germany's economy collapsed, leading to widespread unemployment and social unrest. Hitler and the Nazi Party capitalized on this turmoil, presenting themselves as the only force capable of restoring order and prosperity. By 1933, the Nazis had become the largest party in the Reichstag. President Paul von Hindenburg reluctantly appointed Hitler as chancellor, believing he could be controlled. However, Hitler quickly consolidated power. The Reichstag fire decree and the Enabling Act allowed him to rule by decree, effectively dismantling German democracy. Opposition parties were banned and dissenters were imprisoned or executed. The Nazi regime employed propaganda, led by Joseph Goebbels, to control the media and shape public opinion. Hitler's cult of personality grew, with many Germans viewing him as a near-messianic figure. Adolf Hitler, as Führer of Nazi Germany, was the principal architect of World War II and its associated atrocities. His aggressive expansionist policies and totalitarian regime plunged the world into a conflict that lasted from 1939 to 1945. The war commenced on September 1st, 1939, when Hitler ordered the invasion of Poland, prompting Britain and France to declare war on Germany. Employing a swift and brutal military tactic known as Blitzkrieg or Lightning War, German forces rapidly overwhelmed much of Europe. By mid-1940, Hitler's armies had conquered Denmark, Norway, the Netherlands, Belgium, and France. However, during the Battle of Britain, his Luftwaffe failed to secure air superiority, leading to Germany's first major defeat. In June 1941, Hitler launched Operation Barbarossa, a massive invasion of the Soviet Union. This campaign, driven by ideological goals of Lebensraum and anti-communism, initially saw significant gains. However, the harsh Russian winter and fierce Soviet resistance stalled the advance, leading to a protracted and costly conflict on the Eastern Front. Simultaneously, Hitler's regime orchestrated the Holocaust, the systematic genocide of 6 million Jews and millions of other victims deemed undesirable. This state-sponsored extermination was carried out through ghettos, mass shootings, and extermination camps across occupied Europe. As the war turned against Germany, Hitler's leadership became increasingly erratic. He refused to heed his generals' advice, insisting on holding untenable positions and punishing perceived disloyalty. In March 1945, he issued the Nero Decree, ordering the destruction of Germany's infrastructure to prevent its use by advancing Allied forces, a command largely ignored by his officers. Ultimately, Hitler's unyielding pursuit of his ideological goals and refusal to adapt to the changing tides of war led to Germany's devastation. His actions not only brought about immense suffering and loss, but also reshaped the global order in the post-war era. On April 29, 1945, as the Red Army advanced, Hitler married his longtime companion, Eva Braun, in a brief civil ceremony within the bunker. The following day, April 30th, facing imminent defeat, Hitler and Braun took their own lives, Hitler by gunshot and Braun by ingesting cyanide. Their bodies were carried to the garden above, doused in petrol, and set ablaze as per Hitler's instructions to prevent their capture. News of Hitler's death was announced on German radio on May 1st, 1945. His demise marked the collapse of the Third Reich and paved the way for the end of World War II in Europe. In the aftermath, Germany was divided among the Allied powers, leading to the Cold War's onset. Hitler's legacy is one of unparalleled destruction and human suffering. His death symbolized the end of a dark chapter in history, serving as a stark reminder of the perils of totalitarianism and unchecked power.